My fiancé said my mom talks too much for a widow, then uninvited her from our wedding. I stayed quiet, let her have her big day, and gave her the wedding she deserved. I should have walked away that night. The moment she said it, not even whispered it, just loud enough for the whole table to catch it and pretend they didn't. But I stayed seated, like a coward in a suit. It was our engagement dinner. Not a huge one. Just something Claire threw together to celebrate the formal milestone, as she put it. Rooftop restaurant, soft music, modern chairs that were more aesthetic than comfortable. Her kind of place. Her kind of people. On my side, it was just me and my mom, Judith. She's never been flashy. Just warm, present, and the kind of person who talks with her hands even if she's holding a glass. She wore a navy blue dress that night, and the necklace I gave her for her 60th. I remember because she kept nervously touching it. When the champagne came out, Claire's dad stood up and gave a short speech. All about wishing us strength and how Ryan's lucky to have landed someone like Claire. A couple of laughs. Polite applause. Then my mom stood. She started slow, her voice a little shaky, but she pulled through. Told a story about my dad, about how, when I was 6, he used to bring me tiny Matchbox cars after every night shift. She said that a month before he died, he told her I'd marry a girl who sparkles. She closed the toast by looking at me and saying he would have loved to meet her. It was gentle, honest, maybe a little longer than it needed to be. My mom's not great at brevity, but heartfelt. People clapped again. My mom sat down. She was still smiling when Claire leaned over to one of her bridesmaids and muttered, just loud enough for half the table to hear, "Someone get the widow a hobby before she starts toasting the dessert menu." A few of Claire's friends giggled. One choked on her wine, trying to cover it. I froze. I didn't say anything, not then. I just looked at my mom. She was still smiling, but her fingers trembled slightly where they clutched her napkin. Claire just turned to me and raised her glass, like nothing had happened. The next morning, while we were brushing our teeth, I brought it up. The words hung in the steam between us. "You embarrassed my mom," I said quietly, not looking at her. Claire glanced at me in the mirror, toothbrush still in her mouth. She spat into the sink and asked, "What are you talking about?" "At dinner," I said. "The comment. About her needing a hobby." Claire rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. That wasn't serious. I was just joking." "She heard you," I said. "Everyone did." "Well," Claire said, shrugging, "maybe someone should tell her that making every toast about your dead dad makes people uncomfortable. It's been, what, 20 years? I stared at her. She just kept applying her eyeliner and added, "I'm not saying she's a bad person, but she guilt trips people for attention. That's not going to fly at the wedding. I'm setting boundaries." That word, boundaries, she threw it around like it came with moral immunity, like it gave her the right to turn empathy into inconvenience. "She didn't guilt trip anyone," I said. Claire gave me a quick smile. "I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying, she needs to know this wedding isn't about her." That should have been the end of it. But she wasn't done. A few days later, Claire told me she was reworking the ceremony lineup. I asked what that meant, and she said, "I don't think it makes sense for your mom to walk down the aisle with you. It's not a funeral procession." I just stared at her. She took that as permission to keep going. "She can sit in the second row," she said. "I just want the processional to look clean." "She's my mom," I said. "My only parent." "I know," Claire replied, softening her voice. "But we need to think about the tone of the event. I don't want people to feel, I don't know, emotionally hijacked." "Emotionally hijacked," I repeated. The phrase felt like a slap in slow motion. She nodded. "This is supposed to be a celebration, not a tribute." A few nights later, I walked into the living room and saw her with her laptop open, arranging table layouts in a spreadsheet. I leaned over to look. There it was. Table 5, groom's family, blank. I blinked. "Where's my mom?" I asked. Claire didn't even look up. I took her off. I stood there, silent. After a second, she added, "I did what you were too scared to do. She doesn't belong at the ceremony. She'll cry. She'll make it awkward. You know I'm right." "You didn't even tell me," I said. "I figured you'd just argue. And I'm not doing that. I'm planning a wedding, not managing someone's grief narrative." Her voice was even. Cold. She said it like it was logistics. "I'm not saying she can't come to the reception," she continued, tapping at her laptop. "Maybe, if she behaves, but not the ceremony." I didn't argue. Not that night. I just stared at the screen, at the space where my mom used to be, and I nodded. "You're right," I said quietly. "It's your day." Claire smiled, thinking that meant she'd won. Later that night, I sat alone in the kitchen. I called my mom. I told her the truth, that she wasn't invited anymore, that I hadn't known, that I was sorry. She paused on the other end of the line, then said softly, "It's okay, honey. If she doesn't want me there, I won't be. But I'll still be thinking of you." That was it. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. Just left the door open like always. I hung up, sat there in the dark, and thought about how many times she'd sacrificed for me. Canceled vacations, picked up extra shifts, got up at 4 a.m. to pack my lunches during finals week. And now she was uninvited from the most important day of my life. So I opened my laptop, not to cancel the wedding, just to rewrite my speech. And that was the moment the toast became a plan. Claire didn't just erase my mom from the ceremony. She wrote her out like she was a scheduling conflict. The email went out on a Tuesday. I found out that same evening, not because Claire told me, but because my mom forwarded it to me with no comment. Just the subject line. This hurt, but I understand. I opened it and read each line like I was falling downstairs. Hi, Judith. We've made some changes to the ceremony to keep the event intimate and focused on the couple's vision. We appreciate your understanding, and we'll follow up about reception logistics separately. That was it. No greeting, no warmth, no apology, no signature from us both, just Claire. I stared at my screen for a full minute. Then I called her. What the hell is this? I asked the moment she picked up. Claire didn't ask what I was referring to. She just sighed. Look, I knew you'd get dramatic, she said. That's why I handled it myself. I needed the pressure gone. You emailed my mom to tell her she's not coming to the ceremony. She'll be fine. She's an adult. It's not like I banned her from the country. She's my mother, I snapped. She raised me alone. You couldn't even talk to her in person? Claire's tone sharpened. Your mom is not the only person who matters here, Ryan. And frankly, I'm tired of feeling like I have to tiptoe around her feelings. She's manipulative, and she uses your dead dad like a moral shield. That sentence, that exact phrase, it's what snapped something in me. I didn't yell. I didn't hang up. I didn't curse or storm out. I just said, okay. Claire paused. Okay. You've made it clear, I said. This is your day. I'm glad you're seeing it that way. She replied, clearly relieved. You're being mature for once. I told her I was going to stay with my cousin for a couple days to get my head right. She said that was probably a good idea. By the time I ended the call, I already knew how this would go. My cousin Luke is a lawyer. The kind who reads contracts in bars and chuckles at how bad most of them are. When I showed up at his place that night, I handed him a folder. Need a second set of eyes, I said. He opened it. Inside was a revised wedding program, a new guest list, a formal cancellation of our marriage license filing, and a speech draft titled, Plan B Toast, for use if necessary. Luke skimmed for 3 minutes and then looked up at me. You serious about this? I nodded. Okay, he said, smiling grimly. Then let's make sure the exit is clean. Over the next week, I played my role. I smiled through tastings. I complimented floral arrangements I didn't pick. I nodded when Claire announced we'd be doing a social media first look reveal before the ceremony, whatever that meant. She didn't notice that I had quietly scheduled a second photographer, one who worked strictly off book, paid in cash. She also didn't notice that the seating chart file on the shared drive wasn't the final one. I had printed a new version, one with a few key edits. Judith's name? Back in, but not in the back row. I put her at the center table, next to the mic. Claire's cousin Nathan, the one who once called my mom, that sad widow energy, he'd be seated near the restroom. And I also added a note to the venue coordinator, letting her know that only I would be giving the final toast. Not Claire. Not her father. Me. Claire had signed off on the contract without reading the fine print. She trusted that I was being mature again. The last thing I did was write a message to my mom. It was short. You'll be there. You'll sit at the center table. You won't say a word until I ask you to. I promise you won't be embarrassed. I promise she'll never do this to anyone again. She didn't reply right away. Then, later that night, I got a single thumbs up emoji. That was her way of saying, I'm in. 3 days before the wedding, Claire called me while I was at Luke's place. Just checking in, she said. Are you still good with everything? Yeah, I said. Everything's set. You're being really calm lately, she said, sounding both suspicious and proud. I just want you to be happy, I replied. There was a pause. Then she said, I knew you'd come around. That's what makes us work. We're a good balance. I agreed. We were. Just not in the way she thought. I went over the plan one last time with Luke. There would be no screaming. No scenes. I wouldn't cancel the wedding. I'd let it happen, every minute of it. The ceremony. The dinner. The awkward relatives and fake smiles. Because Claire wanted her day, and I was going to give it to her. Right up until I took the mic. The day of the wedding felt like watching a movie I didn't like, but had to sit through anyway. Claire was in her full performance mode, posing for photos before the ceremony, directing bridesmaids like a showrunner, micromanaging the DJ. The venue staff buzzed around her like stagehands. Everyone knew who the star was. That was the point. I kept quiet, calm, wore the charcoal suit she picked out, even though it didn't fit quite right across the shoulders. Smiled through the groom's solo shots. Let her sister correct my boutonniere 3 times. She asked once, jokingly, You're not getting cold feet, are you? I shook my head and said, You've waited too long for this. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and went off to film a TikTok with her maid of honor. And so the day began. The ceremony was short and perfectly choreographed, just the way she wanted it. The aisle was lined with faux eucalyptus. The officiant was her family's pastor. The music was some instrumental Taylor Swift thing I didn't recognize, but everyone clapped like they did. Claire's entrance was dramatic, late by exactly 4 minutes. A pause for effect. Her father walked her down the aisle as cameras flashed. I kept my face still, focused. I didn't look toward the back of the room, where I knew my mother was sitting, quiet, composed, in a navy blue dress with the pearls I bought her for her last birthday. Claire never turned around to see her. She was too busy basking. The vows were predictable. Claire's were poetic, pre-written, probably workshopped by her copywriter friend. I'd heard her rehearsing them in the bathroom 2 nights ago. I used the same vows we'd agreed on, just altered slightly. No one noticed. I kept them short. Then came the kiss. The cheers. The exit. Claire looked victorious. Radiant. She'd done it. The reception hall was just a staircase away, but it felt like another world. The place was stunning. Long tables with custom menus, a string quartet playing something moody. Claire took her place at the head table and beamed like she'd conquered Rome. I noticed she'd changed into her second dress, more form-fitting, more social-ready, as she once called it. Designed to look spontaneous, but planned for maximum attention. She didn't notice the seating chart had been swapped. She didn't see my mother seated at the center table. And she certainly didn't notice that half the people at her Instagram-friendly flower wall weren't her guests at all. They were mine. People she hadn't spoken to once, but who were quietly waiting for something. Dinner started. Speeches were made. Claire's father went first, again praising her, saying things like, Claire was born leading, and she has a strong sense of who she is and what she wants. A few guests clapped. I watched Claire soak it up, nodding subtly. She nudged me and whispered, "That's your cue soon. Ready?" I nodded and smiled. But I wasn't planning to go next. Not yet. Claire's maid of honor followed with a long-winded, vaguely insulting speech about how Claire always knew what she deserved and wouldn't settle until she got it. More claps. More awkward chuckles. I stayed quiet. Then the music faded slightly, and the DJ's voice came through the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, our groom would like to say a few words." The room turned toward me. I stood, walked to the mic, took the glass of champagne that had been placed beside it, my signal, and cleared my throat. "Thank you all for being here," I began. "Really, it means a lot to both of us." I glanced over at Claire, who gave me a little nod, her eyes wide with anticipation. "Weddings," I continued, "are strange things. They're not just a union. They're a declaration, not just of love, but of who we are when we stand in front of the people we claim as family." I paused. I'd like to begin by thanking someone who was almost not here today. Someone who was, at one point, removed from this guest list. Quietly, by design. I looked straight at my mother. "She's seated at the table she deserves," I said, even though the bride didn't want her here. The room shifted. Claire's smile twitched, just slightly. "My mother raised me alone," I said. "She worked 2 jobs, buried her husband, sacrificed vacations, sleep, and comfort so I could be the man standing here." I let the silence hang. And when she gave a toast at our engagement dinner, she was mocked. Loudly, publicly, dismissed as a widow who needed a hobby. That was the exact phrase, "If anyone here needs a refresher." The air changed. Several guests visibly stiffened. Claire froze, the color in her cheeks fading. But she didn't complain. I continued. She just stepped aside. Because that's what good people do. I turned toward Claire. "You wanted this to be your day. Every moment. Every chair. Every flower. You wanted control. You got it." Claire opened her mouth slightly, as if to interrupt. I raised my hand gently. "I'm almost done." A few people chuckled, nervous, low. "Claire," I said, "I wish I could say this is your wedding. But it's not. Because we're not getting married tonight." There were gasps. Audible ones. Claire stared at me like I'd just spoken another language. I kept going. "I canceled the license filing last week. Your photographer got great photos today, but not of a marriage. Just a well-decorated rehearsal." Claire stood, stunned. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Sit," I said softly. "You'll want to hear the last part." She didn't, but everyone else did. "I gave you this day because I wanted you to see what it looks like when someone chooses kindness over cruelty, loyalty over image. And when someone decides that no matter how expensive the dress or how curated the playlist, there are some things you can't polish." I raised my glass. To my mother, and to everyone here who knows the difference between love and possession. Then I set the mic down and walked back to my seat, next to the only woman in that room who ever showed me unconditional love. Claire didn't follow. She stood by the table, trembling, still in her perfect white dress, alone. Exactly how she wanted it. For about 5 seconds after I put down the mic, the room was silent. The kind of silence that feels heavier than noise. A full room of people in nice shoes and expensive hair, suddenly realizing they weren't at a wedding. They were at a reckoning. Then the murmurs started. One gasp here. A few forks dropped. Chairs squeaked. I didn't look at Claire again. I just walked back to my mother's table, our table now, and sat down. She looked at me like she didn't quite believe what she'd just seen. But there was pride in her eyes. And something else, relief, maybe. Like she had held her breath for the past 3 months and could finally exhale. "I'm sorry it took this long," I said softly. She didn't say anything right away. Then she just nodded, eyes glossy, and said, "Thank you for seeing it through." Claire was still standing near the front table, frozen like someone had cut the strings on a puppet mid-performance. Her maid of honor whispered something, but Claire didn't respond. Her father rose halfway, clearly unsure whether to step in or not. Eventually, Claire sat down slowly, like her knees had given out. She reached for her champagne glass, but her hand was shaking too much to hold it. People weren't clapping. They weren't laughing. They weren't yelling. They were watching. It was the one thing Claire had always wanted. An audience. Just not like this. The DJ, poor guy, stood behind his setup like he wasn't sure if he was about to get sued or punched. I walked up to him and said calmly, "Don't worry. Keep playing. The dinner's still paid for." He gave me a strange look. "Should I change the music?" he asked hesitantly. "Yeah," I said. "Play something freeing." He smirked. And then, like some cosmic joke written by a playlist god, the opening chords of Fleetwood Mac's "Go Your Own Way" rolled out over the speakers. I didn't request it, but I didn't stop it either. Claire flinched at the first lyric. Guests began shifting. A few of my college friends came up and patted my shoulder. Claire's cousin mouthed, "Damn." Claire's boss, who had flown in from San Francisco, picked up his wine glass and calmly relocated himself 3 tables away. I saw one of Claire's bridesmaids slide out her phone, glance at me, then flip the camera around to selfie mode. Claire noticed, and that's when the facade cracked completely. She stood, grabbed the mic off the stand, and said, "Okay, so that just happened. But let's not forget who did all the planning here. Who actually built this event." Her voice was sharp. Her smile was brittle. Desperate applause from one distant aunt. Claire added, "I gave everything to make this perfect. I sacrificed to make it beautiful. And I will not be made to look like some villain." She paused, looked around, realized no one was backing her. Then she turned toward me and snapped, "You think you look noble? You look pathetic. Running to your mommy the moment things got tough. That's who you are." I stood slowly, walked back toward the mic, took it gently from her hand. "I'd rather run to someone who loves me," I said, "than marry someone who edits reality." She didn't respond. She just shook her head, muttered something I didn't catch, and stormed toward the exit, heels echoing on the polished floor. The door didn't slam behind her. It clicked shut like a quiet period at the end of a long sentence. The reception didn't end. Not right away. It shifted. Guests relaxed, laughed, ate. People danced, not wildly, but enough to make it feel human again. Real. Judith got 3 separate toasts at our table. Not one of them planned. She cried once. Not loudly. Just enough that I had to slide over a napkin and remind her to breathe. The second photographer I'd hired captured everything. Smiles, side eyes, quiet nods of approval. The moment Claire left the room, my mother leaned over and whispered, "Now this feels like family." I stayed until the end. Helped the staff clean up. Thanked the caterers. Even gave the DJ a tip. The venue manager came over around 11 p.m., shook my hand, and said, "In 10 years, I've never seen anything like that." I asked him if that was good or bad. He laughed. "Good," he said. Eventually, Claire's things were already gone from the apartment by the time I got home the next day. She'd taken her makeup drawer, her curated glassware, and most of the bathroom products. She left the ring, just placed it on top of a closed copy of Modern Bride with a sticky note that said, "Hope this was worth the drama." I smiled, pocketed the ring, and tossed the magazine. It was worth every word. A few days later, I got a message from Claire's mother. Not an apology, just a brief note. "You embarrassed her. You'll regret that someday." I didn't reply, because I didn't feel embarrassed, and I hadn't lost anything worth missing. In fact, I had gained something I hadn't realized I needed back. My self-respect. I printed out the speech I gave, framed it, and placed it on my bookshelf. Next to it, I added a second frame. A candid photo from that night. My mother and I, mid-laugh, at the center table. No floral arch. No bride. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.